All right, so very warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us to talk about African artificial intelligence. If you've been on the calls before, you know what I'm going to say next. If you haven't, well, it's a big surprise. Join future calls and then you'll be able to go and miss this first minute. All I'm going to say is ask your questions. Please use the opportunity to, put Mark under the spot, share your ideas with him. Let's make it participative. Otherwise, I'm just going to be here asking my own questions, and sometimes I even get bored of those. So much happier when you guys get engaged and start to run the show, and I'm just facilitating your conversations with our guest. What are we going to go and cover? Well, let's start just by giving a quick introduction to Dr. Nasila. Mark Nasila, Chief Data Analytics Officer at FNB Risk. He is clearly a leader in the AI space, not just within the context of what he does at the bank. He's well regarded. He's on the world stage. He's working for multiple organizations in board seats, Moody's, for example. He's also just recently presented at the Singularity University event down here in Santon, which was absolutely awesome. So someone that's at the forefront of data analytics. I've met him a couple of times, and I also find him incredibly humble and thoughtful. And that for me, for this session, is particularly important because whereas someone like me who goes out and gets particularly excited about AI, perhaps I can get a little bit carried away with the hype cycle and start thinking of all sorts of insane possibilities about what we can do with AI. Someone like Mark hopefully will ground me and put it back into the perspective, not just about what's happening globally, but specifically within an African context. So with that, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Where are you calling in from?
Thank you so much, Colin, for having me. And to those who are joining us on this session today, I'm actually calling you from France, where I'm attending a board meeting, the Moody's board meeting. Really honored to be here. And thank you for the wonderful introduction.
That's all right. That's all right. If only they could see the legs thrashing underneath the water as we prepped for this call with about 1 minute to go in to try to get the connectivity working. Hopefully it's going to last for the next 42 minutes. So I better get going. Let's kick off with the most obvious question. You're incredibly busy. You're incredibly busy at FNB or First Round. You're incredibly busy with your outside activities. Why on earth did you decide to go and write a book?
That's the $1 million question, Colin. But when you look at what's been happening, especially in the last few years, AI and technologies that are related around it are not just changing businesses, they're not just driving modernization, they are reimagining everything, almost changing the meaning of life. The current reality has meant that organizations cannot continue doing things the way they were doing based on the current reality, a reality made up of geopolitical complications. We're all dealing with interest rates across the world, especially by natural resource producing countries. Modernization and globalization are changing everything. But for countries, it means an opportunity to reimagine themselves, grab an opportunity, especially for the African continent. From my reflective perspective, Colin, whenever we've had these opportunities to modernize and drive industrialization, Africa has always been left behind. And it's been left behind partially because of a know-how to strategize, to grab those opportunities. But we also have a bit of a culture of waiting for other leaders to, spearhead opportunities and almost play a consumer role. This technology provides Africa an opportunity to solve its problems. It provides an opportunity to, drive industries through, concrete strategies. And I felt that we're going on a trend where we're likely to miss this opportunity. And for us to do that, I felt, let's have a way of making this an everyday person's conversation so that we can hold everyone accountable, we can ask the right questions, we can understand where our opportunities lie, we can understand what risks come with embarking on AI strategies. And therefore I wrote a book that, one, articulates the implications of getting it wrong, a book that socializes how to strategize with AI, making sure it's everyday's person a question or conversation to hold leaders, decision makers accountable and to contribute to where we think we should be doing. The book touches on a few misconceptions about AI. For example, AI taking away jobs. How do we design a future made up of human and machine partnerships? And we conclude with two very great chapters on introducing generative AI. At the time I was finishing the book, ChatGPT was invented, and I felt it was important generative AI to be spoken about in relation to what it can do for us, including what questions should leaders and boards ask their AI teams about AI. And
Let's
that's the
just
reason why I wrote the book.
so let's summarize that then. So an intense sense that Africa is going to get left behind, and therefore to go and produce a book which is a manual, it's something which people can actually use to assist them, whether they're in government, whether they're in business, or whether they're just the individual on the street. And I think that resonates from having read it in the build up to this very much with me, that I find it incredibly instructive and informative. So thanks for taking the time for that. I hope that your colleagues at work are giving you the necessary credit, because that must have been a hell of a balancing act to do both things. But it's incredibly important. Now let's start over in the US before we talk about Africa and get your sense. And I'm going to use a kind of a singularity phrase which has caught on from Ray Kurzweil. He believes that this century we're going to see 20,000 years worth of progress if you reference that to the 100 years of progress we made in the last. So a huge acceleration, and most of that acceleration is coming from AI and from the augmentation of AI with all these other technologies, cloud and quantum and data transfers, cheaper energy, and 1,001 other things that are all assisting in this process. Clearly, we couldn't have done what we do with large language models today just a few years back because we didn't have the other resources that we needed to do this. Now, against that backdrop, it suggests that we're moving into this world from the movies where virtually everything is going to be automatable. We're going to see robots coming through from Tesla, for example, to go and complement what we're doing with the intelligence side of things. So that's the American kind of standpoint. And before we talk about Africa, has what I've described, is that something that you kind of believe in, with this monumental change in this short period of time, or am I getting overly excited about the possibilities of AI?
You're excited about it the right way, Colin. I think in a nutshell, there is no company that is going to survive without automating things that must be automated. There is no company that is going to survive by um, not exploring its human intelligence. But I think
Yeah.
it's the way people must view technology because
Go back to that point, Mark, and I'm interrupting you, but it's so
yeah,
incredibly important what you've just said there. There's no company that's going to survive that doesn't use AI to automate where it's possible to actually go and use AI in that space. I mean, that is a huge change from where we've been in years come by and gone by.
exactly. And while we think about automation in the terms of technology, Colin, it's more about doing the right things and doing things the right way. And it's about allowing people to focus on doing things the right way where humans are needed. Explore our creativity, explore our ability to think out of the box and come up with solutions that are relevant. Explore our ability to reason and keep up with emerging risks and complexities that come with the digital expectation. Those things are very limited from a technology perspective, but technology can power uh, human beings to make sure that we explore more and become creative. I think while we're worried about the singularity, and we do feel that we're heading there, while we even worried about artificial general intelligence, today's AI is driving narrow intelligence, and that is already so powerful. I know we talk about autonomous cars, but people don't realize autonomous cars are basically a combination of narrow AI solutions that are working together to auto drive cars. These solutions have become so powerful, and no one could imagine today that you could prompt a technology and it could generate human-like, paragraphs. But the challenge lies in embedding these solutions in our processes, identifying the right opportunities, understanding where the need is. And I think when you reflect on what America has done is to, through its tertiary or higher education institutions, power research that is driving the discovery of these solutions. Obviously, with that, they're also attracting talent because those developments are very lucrative for data scientists and AI scientists who want to be part and parcel of this journey. On the other side, China is driving execution, putting together platforms like Alipay, Tencent, that are democratizing technology. I'm not saying America is not doing that, but they've more focused on execution. Where I see Africa playing a role is almost influencing those strategies and making sure we craft very concrete our AI strategies that articulate the needs of what we want to do with AI and influence, the ones like China, America, who are more playing a discovery role to put our needs in place.
Okay, so there's a couple of pieces that go into that, but let's use an example. Let's chat about, I don't know, agentic agents. So this is a scenario where, and it's very relevant for FMB or first round, it's very relevant for banks, for telcos, for anyone really that's got customer facing stuff. We're moving into this world where in the next year or two, and there are plenty that believe it might be in the next couple of months, some say it's already happening, there's an argument we won't need call center agents because the combination of artificial intelligence algorithms, data sets that we can feed into them so that they can in real time have conversations with us, and other technologies that make it fun to have conversations with them. It makes them personable. For example, avatars that look human like are moving us into a world where we are going to be talking to AI agents rather than people. And they're going to be helping us with very complex discussions when I should be saving, how I should be saving, whether I should get this package versus this package, conversations which really require in our own human experience and rational thinking and training. And this is going to be happening at an incredibly fast pace. Now, the downside is we could lose a lot of jobs from that particular workforce. People say retrain them. I don't know what you retrain them to. So for Africa, this is the first thing I see from AI is that it's a problem because we've got hundreds of thousands of people, for example, in South Africa working in call centers. So what are we going to do with the negative implications of AI? Because every company in the world is going to be looking for productivity and efficiency gains, which AI gives. And unfortunately, that means getting rid of the inefficient side of your business, which is usually expensive tech, buildings, or people.
Colin, that's a great question. Well, when you reflect on South Africa and Africa's economic context, it calls for a bit of a different approach to adopting AI. And by that I mean, we need to more focus on tasks and priorities that require augmenting solutions other than totally taking away tasks. Already, if you just look at opportunities where productivity will still be realized by augmenting people, will still benefit significantly. The second part is thinking from a socioeconomic perspective. So, for example, I'll give you the petrol industry, the petrol attendants. Tomorrow, you could wake up and just say, "Listen, let's have self-service petrol stations." There is a reasoning behind why we don't have them, and these are about the socioeconomic implications. So I'm saying we need to prioritize AI and tasks that augment roles so that through that people can upskill. But also, I think for a long time, when we've thought about technology, there's two schools of thought that have gone through innovations around the use of technology. The first one, which has been very easy, is organizations, for example, in the finance industry, wait for technology to be discovered and then they implement it. Like, for example, the internet came, branch banking. Then we have cell phone banking, and today we're talking about, even more advanced voice capabilities that enable banking. So in all those instances, the technology has changed, but the construct of banking, the product is not changed. It's just been iterated. That's what we call innovation by iteration. The second school of thought is more about breaking everything down and building from scratch. And the current advancement of AI is doing that. So we need to rethink the construct of jobs and the meaning and the new definition of work. Because customers today are not thinking about products anymore, they're thinking about context. So what AI has done, initially people used to measure the value proposition on the interaction with the products, the check account, or maybe the credit product, or maybe the insurance product. But today they're thinking of context in relation to their needs. For example, how, is this product going to help me take my kids to school? If it's a health product, is this product going to allow me to live longer and be healthy? And that's why we talk about contextual banking, contextual health insurance. That also applies to the contextual new ways of working, where technology will play a major role in redefining repetitive tasks, mundane tasks, and we need to maybe spend less hours thinking. But also, we need to start thinking about a universal wage, because not everyone should be working. In fact, maybe not all of us are supposed to work in relation to a world that is industrialized with technology. So that change of work should be socialized gradually, so that we can adapt to what work means in the future.
Do you think we can do this without government intervention? It feels to me that if we leave it to the private markets, they're going to run away, and there's going to be all sorts of negative consequences, all sorts of negative externalities, which they are just not forced to worry about under existing legislation.
So the private sector has been at the forefront of driving innovations, and because its customers have driven that expectation. Uh, but I think there's two things we realize. There's certain problems that one sector cannot solve by itself, and we saw that through COVID, right? Uh, all the sectors had to come together, either to put policies or strategies together uh, to be able to navigate that reality. The reality we're talking today is very similar, but it's being driven by AI and other emerging technologies. They change the future of work. This technology is impacting every single industry, and the ones that will work by themselves will either get it wrong or they will not be able to navigate and get it right. At the Singularity Summit, I talked about sovereign AI. This is why the impact of this technology just goes beyond the productivity conversation we're having. It goes beyond efficiency, because you can only be efficient up to a certain level. Then after that, what happens? That is why governments across the world are even worried about national security. They're worried about, the AI threats. They're worried about brain drain. For this to be successful, all the sectors and government have together come together and collaboratively put together policies of how AI will be adopted in a safe way, how AI will be socialized, the future of work, reimagine how policies that are in a workplace where AI is very mature. But most importantly, for an economy of like South Africa, we need to agree what are the sectors or areas to prioritize, because we don't have big economies to just play the POC and the pilot game with AI, because a few things will help us shift the needle than do everything and not get anywhere.
Do you think governments are doing enough across Africa? The UK, Europe, the US, China, governments are doing huge amounts of work to think about the ethics of AI, the rollout of AI, the legislation to go with AI, and they're at different levels in their kind of progress there, but they're putting a lot of money and time into it, obviously. Is much happening across Africa in your experience? I'm guessing not, because you wrote the book partly to encourage people to do something.
So, in terms of when you look at strategies, only I think 9 or 10 countries in Africa have a strategy. There is a lot of POCs and pilots taking place, but you see, POCs and pilots are expensive. Value of AI comes from you when you totally transform functions. We're seeing a lot of discussions happen in place. In fact, a lot of these policies or strategies I'm talking about have just been put in place in the last couple of months. So it's good that we're seeing movement. But you see, when you compare the rate at which China, or even the European Union put together their framework, how America, a very big country, agreed on their AI policies, we need to rethink the pace at which we're doing things because this technology is changing so fast. The advantage they have is that they're learning from their mistakes in the journey of driving AI adoption, while we're just putting policies in place or even putting together advisory committees and things like that. So we must combine the theoretical policies as well as the doing, and the doing comes from having crafting strategies that we that articulate where we're going to apply AI. So we're a bit slow, but in the past couple of months we've actually we've seen a lot of movement happening.
One of the areas which potentially, I mean, you mentioned garage attendants, and it just gets me thinking because when I look at Europe and first world markets, you see, I think, huge amounts of risk, especially for white collar workers, for people that are kind of in the thought economy, they're in office blocks, they're in the services, kind of space. There are huge risks, huge opportunities from using AI. When I think about Africa, though, I mean, 90%, it was the latest stat that I read of African population is in the informal sector. Okay. Not necessarily reported, not taxed, not something that sits there with a nice pension fund on the back of it, and not something that's sitting in a large corporate environment with all the controls that comes from that. And I just wonder how impacted they will be by this AI revolution. I mean, if you're working in agriculture, if you're a farmhand, for example, what's going to happen, in that space? If you're in the security sector, I mean, there's so many where I just sort of feel they're almost going to go through this untouched, at least for the next 5 or 6 years. You've put thought into that. How do you think they're going to be impacted?
It depends with how we approach AI. It totally depends on that. If we're going to approach the adoption of AI passively and just think about short-term automation and, okay, let's create a bit of incremental revenue, people will be affected. In fact, we're seeing a very bad trend in Europe where small and medium businesses have been reckless in investing in AI without understanding whether AI will be more productive than people. And that is resulting to what we refer as the productivity trap, where you invest in AI, and what AI does is just do things faster without necessarily being more valuable than people do. And at a later stage, the only way to justify investment in AI is for people to lose jobs. So because now you can continue getting the same output. I think what we need to do is to identify a few sectors or industries and work, envisage the outcome. What type of future do we want in an AI-enabled country? Say the energy sector, maybe the health sector, education, agriculture, transport. And within those sectors, we identify the right opportunities for modernization, where we need efficiencies, where we need to power people, to work with technology to be effective, where we need, products, and work our way backwards. This way, we're going to understand the types of skills and how we can prepare people for the opportunities. I don't believe in the passive approach of AI and humans because we're repurposing people, and in 5 years, we don't even sure whether we're repurposing to a role that technology will come and take over because we did not start with an end in mind. So this requires us to make AI a value conversation. How do we make sure that the end in mind represents the value AI will bring for different sectors? Then work our way backwards. And that way we'll create more opportunities. That's the only way to industrialize AI and make sure that we create AI factories that will manufacture intelligence that will result through products and services that are crafted to solve for where we've identified, and that will be powered by people. And that's the way we'll create opportunities. China is already doing that. America is already doing that. And we can do that very easily.
Interesting. We'll come back to that in a minute. Shannon's got a question here. I'll just breaking down and building from scratch seems like the only way to stay relevant in an AI world. I think of the school systems, and it's so far behind. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. They can't possibly catch up without a complete restructure. I agree with that. What are your thoughts on the school systems, especially in these underprivileged communities? There's a massive opportunity here, but there's also a chance that they're going to get left behind even further, is kind of my take. How do you make sure they get the opportunity? What do we do?
I think I think uh, I think we're already seeing, for example, AI and data curriculums being introduced to schools. I think I saw an article, publishing how the government is, reimagining the curriculum. But I think as a big start is to just democratize access to quality education. I mean, today in the United Arab Emirates, calculus is being taught by robots. Uh, Robots can, ingest curriculum, personalize it. The problem is around when we talk about quality of education is a very broad term, but when you go to specifics of the problem, we've got similar problems to what other countries or the world side of the world faces. For example, there is always going to be a shortage of science and mathematics teachers. Now, it's a very small proportion. Then how do you democratize quality education? How do you make sure the few teachers we have focus on personalized aspects of learning and allow, automated ways of marking exams, performing assessments, collecting data, including, having human teachers spend time with disabled students. So it's about breaking down the building blocks of learning and understand where can technology play a role and where can we have people to play. I think it's a great point because education is the foundation of everything. Because if people don't learn and acquire skills, then they're not able to play in the economy and make themselves useful in the technology driven world. But also, maybe we need to leverage technology to focus on a few things other than a curriculum that is made up of too many subjects. It makes it affordable, but it also makes it easy for people to learn to acquire skills. But also, that must be powered with the planning I just spoke about. The health sector as well. People who do one thing properly are very, very productive and they excel at it.
Mm. It seems such a hard one, that education one. I mean, we've had Rob Paddock on this series before, and he was very informative. You know, he built Get Smarter, sold it for a lot of money, him and his brother. And he's tackling now trying to work out how to get education out to the millions of people that are not accessing decent education. It seems so simple because you can use the Khan Academy. They've got a AI agent that's working on it, so you can literally have a conversation to go and say, "Hey, I'd like to learn X," and go through that discussion. And as you go through that, it will set problems for you. It'll work out where you are in terms of your understanding and be your personalized teacher. So this is coming. It's there, but this is great if you're sitting in the US. But if you're sitting and you don't have access to the internet, or the data costs are prohibitively expensive for your income, or culturally you're in a space where people are just not pro-education, it's not something that you're going to be encouraged to do. There's a gang outside that wants you to go out and just cause, havoc, and that's the easy draw card for you to get pulled into. This isn't about technology anymore. This is about the social structure and having policies that are actually trying to go and drive things forward. Now we have a problem because we're back into government again, and they're not the quickest institution to drive change in anything, let alone education. I'm being very negative. Do you see something a bit more positive potentially here?
I'm very, very optimistic. I think this is why um, it's important that we make this conversation an everyday person conversation. Uh, when we identify opportunities together, when we identify areas of improvement together, we can make it happen. The African countries are very resilient countries, and I think we can collectively drive that change, just like any other strategy. Uh, the issue is that if we don't have ways of collaborating, it becomes very, very difficult to drive any development. And as I said, if you compare during COVID, COVID was a massive problem. But I think we need to look at the role of AI and technology in a similar way, because I think its impact is going to even be bigger. Because so think about it. If we what is the cost of getting it wrong? The brain drain, the inability to solve social challenges. We're going to be dependent on solutions, external solutions, even simple solutions. We're not going to create employment, because you need strategies and you need to get AI right so that opportunities for people to partake in that value chain can be identified. We're likely to be exposed to a lot of AI threats and risks, because only through practical applications. We're going to learn how these threats manifest in our systems, and we're already seeing a lot of cyber attacks. We likely not to be able to contribute to the global world on our AI lessons, because we will not have implemented anything. So we need to think about it on also, if we don't collaborate, what goes wrong. I do think we have an opportunity. Uh, South Africa has got very talented people. Discoveries that have happened in the past couple of years have demonstrated that even through this technology, we can solve a lot of problems. We're seeing, a lot of startups, Lelapa, Isazi, who are doing great work to socialize and democratize AI through African languages. So I'm very optimistic around making sure we'll get it right.
What's your thoughts on the bias side of things, and let's call it the, I don't know what to call it. That's probably going to get in trouble, but the Americanization of Africa. And where I'm going there is that if I look at the major data sets that are being pulled out from the web and from Wiki and the other sources that are being used to train the models that we have today, clearly there's a huge amount of bias, and it feels to me when I use them that they're very Western in the kind of in the articulation back to you and the content that they provide back to you. I'm really enjoying, by the way, ChatGPT. I don't think I've used Google for a couple of weeks now. I find it just so much better to go in and not have those sponsored adverts. But you can still see that there's bias, and it's a very American agenda of responses that I'm receiving. I'm not surprised, obviously, with it coming from Microsoft. What do you think is going to happen from an Africa context? And are we, I guess, at risk that many of the cultural identities of whole countries, let alone tribes, start to be impacted as more and more people are accessing and using this technology on a daily basis?
It's a big concern, and bias is a human problem. Uh, Technology does not invite itself to the table and say, use me. The current advancements in generative AI have shown that if our data is not represented in models that are making decisions around the world, we're likely not to partake in this global development. And that's why leaders are not worried more about efficiencies, because we could get some sort of efficiency by implementing AI that was not developed on your data, but you miss out on the maximum potential. Um, Also, I think it pays to reflect what data represents, not just numbers or some digital data. It represents policies. It represents how economies have changed. It represents health of a nation. It represents uh, political and socioeconomic decisions. It represents, some of this data represents outcomes of strategies. When you look at it that way, this is why we're seeing the first wave of AI move into this wave of sovereign AI, taking control of the AI development value chain. Because there is more benefit around the AI development value chain than just the outcome of it. AI is going to drive industrialization. It's already doing that. But if it's being done on the construct uh, of input that is not representative, of input that is not balanced, that represents half of the opinions, it means the intelligence as an outcome is also not going to solve problems we want to solve. Also, a part of that bias also scales into the AI risks. The, Africa has got unique cultural considerations as well as risks that come with applying AI. I mean, I gave there was an example I keep on giving in my conversations. In America, there's a father who found out about the daughter being pregnant through a marketing SMS by Target. It was algorithmic driven. In Africa, certain things like that, whether it's correct or wrong, culturally might not be allowed. For example, some families or cultures want to keep pregnancy a secret until at a certain stage. This is very similar to what China has, where they're saying, listen, you have to pronounce our surnames followed by our names. That's how we feel valued, even if the algorithm is correct. So those considerations come in place when there's an inclusive and collective approach to having data and other building blocks in the way AI is designed. We're already seeing a lot of uh, AI accidents in place. In Europe, there was a beauty pageant where out of the 44 winners, only one person of color won was one of the winners, and it was because data was not represented. We've seen in America companies discriminate against women in job applications because the data that was used was not representative. But this can be fixed, and I will tell you why. Because in the AI value chain, it's a series of human decisions, and bias can creep in the AI value chain at any time. How you define the problem, for example, how you prioritize a problem, and how you understand it. Remember, you solve a problem the way you understand it. The second part is data scientists should be equipped with ethical and responsible AI skills to be able to de-bias data. Uh, we're talking about making AI safe, the way the building and construction in the automobile industry sells safety. So the whole AI value chain is a series of human decisions that must think of AI to engineer safety in the AI space.
Mm. Decisions. Let's move that into the company space. We're not going to solve government or education on this call, but I think in your book you've got some really interesting ideas about what businesses should be doing, should have been doing for years. I sensed from the tone. So, to Francis' question, to the point that companies don't use AI, they'll be left behind. How do you identify the right opportunities or processes within those companies to benefit from AI, especially in these siloed organizations that many of us live in or have lived in before?
So that is a great question. And for those who are part of the Singularity Summit, I think that's where we fail as organization in the journey. If you want to identify the right opportunities, the first two things you must make sure is make AI a value conversation. How does AI empower how the way your organization creates value for its customers? Because the opportunities for AI lie within the way your organization creates value. Inefficiencies lie within your processes, so you have to investigate them. We call this ideating in AI. I think we've seen organizations send people to a conference or get publications. Those are good, but they just equip you with skills on how to do your job. There's no shortcut to identifying opportunities. In fact, there's no shortcut to identifying the most important opportunities. So you should ask yourselves, how is the AI strategy enabling the business strategy? How is it empowering the most important needs for shareholders? How is it addressing the customer's needs? How is it helping keep up with what is happening in reality? But for that to happen, you need to empower your workforce to understand AI, to understand its limitations. So run literacy programs so that people are comfortable around this technology. If you understand AI and understand how the organization creates value, then the process of identifying those opportunities becomes very easy. It becomes very objective so that AI can become a business or a value conversation. Um, the question about silos is more on an organization setting itself up to succeed. And
Mm.
and and the part of making AI a value conversation should also assess its readiness. And if the way organization is structured, if it's still operating in silos, that is something leaders have to address before embarking on a journey. You don't want to fail because certain data sets are not accessible or there's no holistic view of a use case. You also need to identify where a use case will be scaled to across the organization. Those things are equally important in setting themselves. That's why sometimes we've said some organizations must just have a readiness assessment to understand where cracks are so that you can prepare yourself before embarking on a strategy.
What do you think is that? I mean, so in the book, and I think it's common sense, even though that doesn't mean it's being applied. I mean, you highlighted about 80% of corporates aren't really running a proper AI strategy. They don't have AI as a common board discussion, for example. I think, it's crazy if I think about the typical board discussions around managing risk and the other sort of operational issues that they're there to try to protect their investors from. The biggest risk is their business goes out of business. And we're in this situation, therefore, where for some, they think that AI is going to allow the first ever individual billionaire. I've just concocted an idea. I'm going to use my AI to create my product, my service, my ecom, whatever it is. And hey, presto, within 6 to 12 months, I'm going to be on at least paper, billionaire. That may well come. But the argument is that startups all around the world are getting access to this technology and they're doing these incredible things and they're going to be disrupting banks and telcos and every other industry that you can think of who previously had these huge moats. And the moats are the capital and distribution that they run. And I wonder if you have a view on that, whether we're now entering a decade where that challenger, that startup risk is now starting to increase significantly to large corporates because they're never going to move quickly. They're not going to identify and implement AI opportunities at the rate of a small startup or a Silicon Valley funded, entity. They're never going to do it. But before it didn't matter so much. You had the big moat, lots of distribution. Do you think that's changing? Are we starting to see real risk coming to the fore for these large institutions?
It is changing significantly. And the reason for that, um, initially organizations were just worried about their competitors leveraging technology or even coming up with superior products and services. What we're seeing today, the new entrants in the market are coming up with similar products or a portion of services that are way superior at a way, way low cost. But that is just not the bigger problem. The bigger problem is globalization has meant that today you can access similar services and products through an application from a provider from the other side of the world. Has meant that shareholders and organizations have to realize AI value faster because things are changing very fast. They've made that they have to engineer value and efficiency much quicker, but also adopt the startup mentality, especially for the big organizations. We can't keep on now lying behind, legacy. Uh, we have to do things differently. And we're seeing a lot of big organizations, adopt that mentality, experimenting and, modifying their value proposition, whether it's in the banking sector or the health sector or even the agriculture sector. Um, I think the pace of disruption is so fast that if you just snooze, you're going to wake up with a proportion of your customers, gone. I think also organizations are realizing that it's not easy to implement AI. It's not easy. Like even today, as we speak, I think about 8 point something percent of organizations have managed to realize the promise of generative AI. Only 1% of financial institutions can give you evidence that they've implemented AI at scale. We have a lot of POCs, too many POCs, but we're talking about transforming everything, 1%. The health sector, 3%. The automobile industry, we're talking about 9, 10%. It's not easy. And it's even not just about the technology because you have to focus on cultural issues, change management, you know, and just coming up with strategies that are realistic and represent the identity of what the organization wants to achieve.
Geez, that was 45 minutes very quickly. Mark, thank you very, very much. I guess the last question from me to you is where can people buy your book? Let's put it there without the green screen. Why is it not working there? Anyway, where can people get your book?
The book is available at all exclusive bookstores in South Africa. You can order the book on Amazon. You can order the book on Takealot. You can get the ebook on Google eBooks. And let's keep this conversation going, because the decisions we make today around this technology will determine how our whether we'll drive industrialization or not, will determine whether we'll be very independent economically, will determine whether we're going to be creating the jobs we want for the next generation, will determine whether we will be superior from a global perspective.
Okay, that's awesome, Mark. Thank you very much. So we've got to wind up now. To everyone that joined, thank you very much. Particular thanks to is it Sifilele to introducing Otter, an AI platform which I use quite often. Maybe it will come in and actually speak for me because I'll be struggling. But do send out those minutes. I hope there's no actions for me on that particular recording. Thanks to everyone for joining and asking the questions. A big thanks for Ecosystem for sponsoring this. When we do send out the transcript, I think I will send out this recording. I'll put it on YouTube so you can get access to it. I'll give you a bit more details about the ecosystem guys. They're doing something which I would classify in the minority report type space, which is quite interesting. I never thought that was going to happen. And then finally, next week on the next webinar, we've got Andrew Jones, who'll be talking about the problem with data scientists, which, Mark, as you are one, I think perhaps you should listen in to as well. I'm sure there's going to be some positive.
Joining you. I'll definitely join you.
I'm sure there'll be some positives as well, and it's just a clickbait title, but we'll have to see. I haven't quite decided yet. So with that, everyone, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Hopefully we'll see you all or some of you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.